Hi kids, it's Miss Atkinson and we are going to go on a field trip to Kennedy Creek. Follow me! We're at the start of the Kennedy Creek Trail. So our journey begins where the salmon journeys end. Here at Kennedy Creek Salmon Trail, chum salmon complete a migration of thousands of miles. As they enter freshwater, they no longer feed. All of their stored energy is used to swim upstream and spawn. Kennedy Creek is a living laboratory for scientists and students whose studies will help salmon thrive. Following these rules will protect their research and preserve chum salmon in their habitat. So if you come, please make sure you go over the rules and follow them. This is used for. Let's go inside and find out. If you look up, you can tell at the top there's a metal ring and the wood poles get closer together. This is how they used to catch fish. They would put these in the river and fish would swim into them and then they wouldn't be able to get out. Welcome to the Kennedy Creek Salmon Trail. Many years ago, another trail passed this way. It began nearby in the Sawamish tribal village. The people believed the salmon and other wildlife to be great teachers and encouraged their children to learn the ways of these animals. From the salmon, the children drew lessons of strength and endurance and incorporated these lessons into their daily lives. Today, the Kennedy Creek Salmon Trail is here so that everyone can observe salmon, including you. The trail also tells about the forest, water, and wildlife that play a role in healthy salmon habitat. The people of the Sawamish village used the old trail to hunt, pick berries, and collect basket-making materials. The trail led to nearby Summit Lake and was part of a network of trails connecting to other villages on southern Puget Sound and the Pacific Coast. So, if you come look over here, this salmon illustration was created by young people from the Squaxin Island tribe. And then here we have our map with our legend. Salmon die after spawning. Their bodies or carcasses drift downstream until stopped by a branch, log jams, or shallow water. Full of nutrients brought back from life in the ocean, the carcasses provide food for many animals. Birds tear at the flesh, raccoons, bears, and other large mammals drag the carcasses to stream banks to eat. Tiny mice and shrews nibble on these remains. Young fish and aquatic insects feed on small bits of salmon flesh remaining in the stream. And if you can hear behind me, they're trying to swim upstream, those that are still alive. When finished with their fishy meals, animals and birds wander away and leave their droppings on the forest floor. The droppings decompose, releasing the nutrients carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus, which are absorbed by the roots of trees and plants. So think of all the different things that salmon feed. And if you look, we can see some salmon carcasses and also some salmon trying to swim upstream. So they're almost at the end of their journey or they already finished their journey. Of life. Salmon need variety. They rest in slow-moving pools during upstream migrations. They spawn in swift, oxygen-rich riffles. When stream flows are high, salmon move out of the main current to slower water in side channels along the stream banks. So here we have spawning salmon in riffle area. High water flows create variety in the stream channel. The stream surges over gravel bars and cuts into the banks, sweeping gravel and sediment into the flow. Water spreads into the floodplain and side channels. Fallen trees and large branches become woody debris when they collect in log jams or lodge against the stream bank. Obstructions formed by woody debris slow the stream so that the current doesn't scour the stream bed and wash away the salmon eggs. So here we have a diagram of that. When the flow subsides, fine sediment settles in the floodplain and in pools instead of clogging the gravel in riffles where salmon eggs incubate. New gravel deposits will be used by next year's spawning salmon. So here we have the fertilized salmon eggs in Alvin. final drama. When chum returned to Kennedy Creek, the stream often churns with activity. Salmon lash the water with powerful tail movements as they swim up swift riffles. They dart back and forth, searching for spawning sites and mates. By watching carefully, you can learn to recognize the spawning behaviors of chum salmon. So, excavation. To dig a depression or pocket for the eggs, and we call these a redd, the female turns on her side and flexes her body vigorously over the gravel. This action creates a suction that lifts the gravel into the current. Altogether, the female will dig several pockets in one area. This group of egg pockets is called a redd. And if you remember, for extra credit, who can tell me how big is a redd? Aggression. Males and females bite and chase each other as they compete for spawning opportunities. Courting. While the female digs, the male courts her by quivering or vibrating his body slightly as he swims alongside her and crossing over, in which he swims from side to side over her back. Gamete release. The female lowers herself into the egg pocket. The dominant male pulls alongside the female. Both fish open their mouths wide. From a small opening near the tail, they release their gametes, eggs and sperm. The eggs sink into the pocket and are covered with gravel as the female excavates another egg pocket just upstream. Carcasses. Salmon carcasses become food for animals, insects, and young fish. So if we look, salmon rest in deep, slow pools. They spawn in gravel bottoms of swiftly flowing riffles. So low water, a riffle, current pool, so a riffle, another pool, and another one. This is an example of log debris. So these logs fell and then they blocked the current. So if you look really closely to where they are, the current is much slower there. As you can see, there are many salmon that have already completed their journey and have hopefully spawned, but if you look up, you can see salmon that are still working on completing their journey. And you can tell that their coloring is different, and if you look directly below us, there is a salmon that has most likely already spawned and is now slowly passing away as its tail is white. And then if you come this way, see even more salmon. So if you look right there, let's see. I'll count in my head. I want you to count with me right now. And then hopefully you'll be able to tell me. So I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 right there in that little pool already. And if we look further up, there are even more. Anywhere from 20,000 to 1 year, there were 80,000 salmon come back to Kennedy Creek. The number is typically 20 to 40,000 though. Think of that many salmon that come back each year. Play big parts. Fiscus Creek is small, but hundreds of chum salmon spawn here every year. Its clean, cool water is just right for incubating eggs. In late fall, it carries just enough flow for salmon to swim upstream. Using strong swimming muscles, chum push their way through the shallow water, often with their backs out of the water. They follow an instinctive urge to return to the place where they were hatched. So, here we have this stream is a tributary of Kennedy Creek. I want you to tell your teacher what the word tributary means. It flows into Kennedy Creek a short distance from here. Contributing its clean, cool, nutrient-rich water, tributary streams carry fallen leaves and small particles of decomposed leaves. These become food for tiny aquatic insects. The insects in turn are food for trout, young coho salmon, and several kinds of birds. The hills, valleys, and streams that shed water to Kennedy Creek make up the creek's watershed. Because the flow of water unites all the streams in the watershed, even the smallest stream is important for salmon. So here we have a diagram of Fiscus Creek into Kennedy Creek. And then we have the shredders, herbivores, and decomposers. The forest in the stream. When rain falls on the forest, millions of drops accumulate on tree branches. Almost half of the drops evaporate. The rest drip to the ground. Trees and plants take up what they need and slow the flow of water over the forest floors. Some water sinks into the soil and is stored as groundwater. In this way, forests and soils throughout the watershed intercept and store rain. This reduces flooding in the stream and helps keep salmon eggs from being washed away. In the dry months of summer, stored groundwater is released to the stream, providing plentiful flows for trout and young coho salmon and thirsty forest animals. Change creates new habitat. Kennedy Creek once flowed here. During a flood, the stream carved its present channel 100 feet away. Today, a few small ponds and this old stream bank are the only clues that salmon once migrated past this spot. Plants and shrubs have sprouted in the former stream channel where a little water still flows beneath the ground. Across the old channel, shrubs and trees flourish in the low-lying floodplain. This riparian vegetation thrives in most soils and often survives flooding or occasional standing water. It looks very different from the drier, more open forests farther from the stream. Animals such as deer and bear visit here, but for many others, the changing riparian area is the only place they can find homes and food. Songbirds nest in trees, salamander eggs incubate in quiet ponds and puddles, safe from the mouths of hungry trout. Mink and river otters hunt for fish and frogs. Deep in the summer nights, bats flit through the air, feeding on insects that are especially abundant near water. Keep at least a foot distance from the edge. Salmon may have laid eggs, and if you step too close, you could shift the rocks and soil, and you could damage those eggs, meaning that those salmon might not live, so please be mindful. Watch chum salmon spawn. For more than a month each fall, you can watch chum salmon here. Some are on their way to spawn further upstream, while other chums spawn in this area. By observing the activities of individual salmon, you can learn to recognize each stage of the spawning process. Chum. So chum salmon, male, purplish red vertical streaks and bars, hooked mouth, teeth larger than female, hump on back, usually larger than female. So if we look at this dead carcass on the ground, I want you to guess, based upon that description, is this a male or a female? Hopefully you've made your guess. Now let's look. I know he's decomposed, so you can't tell, but it looks like he would have had red and purple vertical stripes. And if we look at his jaw and teeth, it's hooked, and it would be much larger than a female, and the teeth are larger, and there's a slight hump on the back. So now, male and mimicry. Satellite males mimic females so that dominant males won't chase them away. They develop a female-like dark horizontal band, and the vertical reddish streaks and bars are subdued. So smaller males will mimic females so that the dominant males don't go after them. Female, less colorful than male, dark horizontal band, teeth smaller than male, body usually smaller than male. After spawning, the tail is often white from digging. So earlier in one of the videos, we showed you one with a white tail. It was most likely a female. A healthy stream is a series of alternating riffles and pools. During fall migration, salmon swim up swift riffles with bursts of energy. They rest in deep, slow pools before continuing their journey. Culverts are key to salmon migration. Culverts allow streams to pass beneath roads. Adult salmon swim through culverts while traveling upstream to spawn. Juvenile salmon use culverts while migrating in the stream. Some older culverts block salmon migration. This culvert was replaced in the 1980s. It allows adult salmon to reach spawning habitat further up Fiskus Creek better than the previous culvert. Problem culverts block about 4,500 river miles of historic salmon habitat in Washington. Replacing these culverts is an important tool for restoring wild salmon runs. So here we have when a culvert is undersized, water can flow too fast for adult and juvenile salmon to swim through it. Juvenile salmon and some species of adult salmon can't jump into the culverts perched above the stream bed. So now we have a new culvert. If we look over here, and it allows the current to not be too fast, so there's not too much water flow, and it's not too high to where salmon can still swim through it. And this was replaced in the 1980s. So if we look, some salmon have already spawned, and here are their carcasses. But if you look in the middle, there are still salmon that are trying to swim up Fiskus Creek. Now we are on the other side of the culvert, and we can see that many salmon have made it through, and some are still alive. Others have already ended their journey. And I want you to look and see if you can find examples of males and females. So if you look right there, you can tell the one has a horizontal dark stripe, and the other one, it had a red stripe. So we have a male and a female, and they are soon to be mating. Modern forest practices manage impacts. Much of the Kennedy Creek watershed is managed for timber harvest. Today, Washington State Forest Practices rules help landowners minimize impacts on water quality and fish and wildlife habitat while providing wood products for their land. Landowners follow forest practices rules when they build roads, harvest timber, replant, and do other work. In addition, the Washington Department of Natural Resources and some large timber companies develop broad-scale habitat conservation plans in cooperation with the federal government to guide forest management activities in their land. So, we come and look at the diagrams. We have A, vegetation buffers next to streams and wetlands reduce erosion, keep water cool, and provide better fish and wildlife habitats. B, so here we have a culvert, and they replaced these not that long ago. So improved road and culvert systems prevent sediment from entering streams and provide passage for fish. C, some live trees, snags, and down trees are left in harvested areas to provide wildlife habitat. D, timber harvest is limited on unstable slopes. And E, harvested areas are replanted promptly. That concludes our salmon field trip. Thank you for coming with me, and remember, if you come out here, bring a mask, social distance, and please be respectful of the wildlife.